You're not going to believe what happened.
Tell me.
I had spent years bending over backward to make my wife happy, sacrificing my own needs in the process. One day, I stopped, and the moment she noticed, everything changed between us. What happened next left both of us stunned. Mark sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty coffee mug in front of him. He had been up since sunrise, making breakfast, packing lunches, and getting ready for work, all without a single complaint. For years, this had been his routine. Always tried to make his wife, Sophie, happy, even when it left him exhausted. He remembered the countless nights he stayed up late, fixing problems she hadn't asked him to fix, rearranging plans so she could have her way, and hiding his own feelings to avoid arguments. At first, it felt good to help, to be appreciated. But over time, he realized something he had ignored for too long no matter what he did. It was never enough. Sophie walked into the kitchen, smiling faintly, and glanced at him. "You forgot to pick up the dry cleaning," she said casually. Mark forced a small smile and nodded. He had spent so much of his life bending to her needs that he barely recognized himself anymore. Inside, a quiet frustration was building. He loved her, but he could not keep losing himself in the process. Something had to change. That evening, Mark returned home from work, tired and drained. The house was quiet, but Sophie was sitting at the table with a frown on her face. "You didn't take out the trash," she said, her tone sharp. "I asked you this morning." Mark felt a lump in his throat. It wasn't just about the trash. It was about every small thing he had done wrong in her eyes over the years, no matter how hard he tried. He looked around the house, the laundry folded, the dishes washed, the floors clean, and realized none of it mattered. For the first time, a surge of frustration and sadness overwhelmed him. He loved Sophie, but he was tired of losing himself, tired of always giving, always adjusting, always sacrificing his own needs for someone who barely noticed his efforts. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. This was the moment he had been avoiding for too long. He couldn't keep living this way. Tonight, something inside him shifted. He made a quiet decision. From now on, he would stop trying to please her at the cost of his own happiness. He didn't know what would happen next, but he knew he had to take this step for himself and for their future. The next morning, Mark woke with a quiet determination. For the first time in years, he decided to put himself first just a little, at least. When Sophie asked him to run an extra errand he didn't want to do, he shook his head gently. "I'm sorry, I can't today," he said calmly. Her brow furrowed, surprise flashing in her eyes. At breakfast, he voiced his own opinion about something he had always kept quiet. Normally, he would have agreed to avoid conflict. This time, he spoke honestly. Sophie blinked at him, unsure how to respond. Later, Mark spent an hour in the garage, working on a project he had abandoned years ago because he felt guilty taking time for himself. The air smelled of sawdust and paint, and for the first time in a long time, he felt energized. When he came back inside, Sophie was still watching him, a puzzled expression on her face. She had noticed the difference. Mark realized something important. Standing up for himself didn't feel selfish. It felt right. And in that quiet morning, a shift had begun, one that would change not only how Sophie saw him, but how he saw himself. For the first time, he felt alive again. That evening, Sophie finally spoke. "Mark, what's going on with you?" she asked, her voice a mix of confusion and frustration. "You're different." Mark looked at her calmly. "I'm not trying to please everyone all the time anymore," he said. "I've been giving so much of myself, hiding my own needs, and I can't do it anymore." Sophie's eyes widened. I didn't realize," she whispered, as if she had never truly seen him before. Mark took a deep breath. "I love you, Sophie, but I've been losing myself trying to make you happy. I need to be honest about what I want, what I feel, and what I need to live fully. I'm not rejecting you. I'm reclaiming myself." Sophie sank into the chair, stunned. The silence hung heavy in the room, broken only by their breathing. She thought about all the time she had taken his efforts for granted, all the little things she hadn't noticed. After a long pause, she reached out, lightly touching his hand. I'm sorry, Mark," she said softly. "I didn't understand before. I see you now. I see everything you've done for us. Mark squeezed her hand gently. For the first time, they were truly looking at each other, not just at the roles they had been playing for years. Over the next few days, Mark noticed subtle but powerful changes. Sophie's attitude shifted, almost without her realizing it. She listened more carefully, asked his opinion, and even paused before criticizing. It was as if his quiet stand for himself had made her see him in a new light. Mark felt lighter, freer. He spent evenings reading, painting, and even taking long walks alone, things he had given up years ago. Each time he pursued something for himself, Sophie watched, sometimes confused, sometimes admiring. One morning, she made him breakfast without asking, smiling warmly. "I thought you might like this," she said. It was a small gesture, but it carried more meaning than any gift he had ever given her. Even their conversations changed. Arguments became fewer and softer. They laughed more, spoke honestly, and shared moments that felt real, not forced. Mark realized that by finally taking care of himself, he had not only healed his own spirit, but also rekindled their connection. Sophie's respect for him grew naturally, and so did their bond. For the first time in years, Mark understood something profound. Change does not come from demanding attention, but from quietly claiming your own worth, and sometimes that is enough to transform everything. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon when Sophie finally confronted Mark again, but this time, her voice carried something different: softness, hesitation, and something like awe. "Mark, I've been thinking," she said, sitting across from him at the table. "You've changed, and I don't know how to say this, but I like it." Mark studied her carefully. Her eyes, usually filled with impatience or distraction, now held a mixture of respect and vulnerability. "I've always been here, Sophie," he said gently, "but I've been hiding myself. I've been afraid to upset you or make things harder, so I lost myself in the process. I can't do that anymore." Sophie's hands trembled slightly. I didn't see how much you were sacrificing. I thought I was just asking for little things. But I never understood how much you gave up." She looked down, ashamed. "I'm sorry, Mark. I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't notice." Mark reached across the table and took her hand in his. "It's not about blame," he said quietly. "It's about understanding each other. I love you, and I always will. But love shouldn't mean losing yourself. It should mean being honest, even when it's hard." Sophie nodded slowly, tears forming in her eyes. "I see that now. I want to do better. I want us to be real with each other. No more hiding, no more pretending." For the first time in years, Mark felt a weight lift from his chest. The tension that had built up over years of trying to please and be unnoticed melted away. They sat there quietly for a moment, holding hands, letting the silence speak. Then Sophie leaned forward and hugged him tightly. "I respect you," she whispered. "I really do." Mark hugged her back, feeling a warmth he hadn't felt in a long time. This wasn't about revenge or proving a point. It was about mutual respect, honesty, and love rediscovered. In that moment, he realized the truth. When you stop losing yourself to please someone else, you create space for real connection. And sometimes, the hardest change you make for yourself can heal the bond you care about most. In the days that followed, life at home felt different, lighter, warmer, and more real. Mark continued to set boundaries, speak honestly, and take time for himself. He painted, read, and went on walks, enjoying the small freedoms he had long neglected. Sophie noticed a difference, and so did he. Their conversations became calmer, more meaningful. Laughter returned to their evenings, not forced or polite, but genuine. She asked his opinions, listened carefully, and showed appreciation in ways she hadn't before. Mark reflected on the journey that had brought them here. For years, he had believed that pleasing Sophie meant keeping the peace, sacrificing himself along the way. But standing up for his own needs had changed everything. It had sparked respect, rekindled love, and deepened their connection. He realized that a relationship could not thrive on one-sided sacrifice. True love required honesty, balance, and courage. And sometimes, the bravest act of all was simply being yourself. Mark looked at Sophie one evening as she smiled at him across the table. He felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. The tension, The unspoken frustrations, they were gone. What remained was something stronger, a love built on respect, honesty, and understanding. For the first time in a long time, Mark knew they were both free to be themselves, and that freedom had brought them closer than ever